The purpose of this show is to guide you to realign with habits that get you to live the life you've always dreamed of. This is the Habit-Based Lifestyle Podcast with Jesse Ewell. This is the habit-based lifestyle where you can access your full potential right now. Finally break free from destructive habits. That dream life, if you want it, you can have it. This is where you transform your health, mind, business, and relationships, or do nothing and keep your life the way it is. But if you're ready for change, you're in the right place. This is where you're gonna learn how to live a habit-based lifestyle. You are tuning in to the Habit-Based Lifestyle Podcast with your host, Jesse Ewell. This is the Habit-Based Lifestyle. Let's go.
All right, guys. I want to welcome you to the Habit-Based Lifestyle and Business Show. Today, I got a very special guest, one of my good friends and clients, Dr. David Boyd, who specializes in hormone replacement therapy. Also, he's one of the go-to providers that I know and that I've seen with everything about hormones, habits, and health. So, David, I want to welcome you on the show today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Can you give our guests kind of a brief intro of just kind of like, you know, where you started and then where you are today, how you got to where you are today in the medical side?
Yeah, absolutely. So where I started really was just with conventional medicine, really the American medical rat race, if you will. And quickly what I realized, you know, I'm an MD, so trained as a traditional physician in a very broken system, that's what I was trained on. It's very reactive, right? So reactive meaning that we wait for folks to get sick. And then once they're sick, then you scramble and you try to undo things and try to patch folks up as best you can so that way that they live then a longer life until eventually they don't, right? And it took me a while to really see this broken system and realize that I was actually, by being involved in it, was actually really kind of part of the problem. Now, when I say this, I have nothing but the utmost respect for my colleagues, for the doctors, for the nurses, for all the folks that need to be there to take care of folks that are sick. It's a needed thing. But it made me stop and think for a second, well, wait a minute. What if there was something that we can do more on the front end? What if we could go so heavy into prevention that could actually stop folks from getting sick in the first place, or at least slow down that aging process enough that it delays these natural processes that are in place? Or what if we can put in healthy habits instead so that folks never develop diabetes, never develop heart disease, never develop all these issues that are so common that end up killing Americans in the long run? So that's really what I became passionate about and eventually brought me down this path that I'm on.
And the path you're on now is you kind of have two sides of your program. One is AlphaOne.
Yes.
And then the other side is Blindspot Medical. Can you tell the listeners kind of like what the difference is between the two and you know, how you help people inside of both those?
Absolutely. So I'll start by saying they're both VIP programs, meaning that, you know, my focus is to make sure that when a client comes to me, that they are being really well taken care of and that it's all very, very personalized. It's not run of the mill at all. Okay. So first and foremost with AlphaOne. AlphaOne is focused on health, hormones, and habits. What do I mean by that? So first we go and we check to make sure that people look okay with their labs. So we do a VIP blood draw. It's usually done in either their home or in their office. We check a good number of labs to make sure that their hormones look okay, their lipids, cholesterol, thyroid, of course, all their major organ systems, so like their kidneys, liver, et cetera, that everything is functioning appropriately. And then we build a custom regimen for them based on what we find and the results that they're looking for. So for example, if I'm working with a man and he's looking to shred fat and add muscle, and his testosterone is either on the lower side or at that point where it can be augmented a bit, we may boost that. We may use different peptide therapies in order to really maximize muscle mass and energy and recovery and so forth and so on. and then we tie that into really a network where they can, if they need some guidance on, well, hey, what should I eat, or what kind of exercise should I do in order to achieve, this result that I'm looking for, then, kind of point them in the right direction in that regard. And they have access, of course, to their doctor, me, in that case, so that they can be focused and make sure that they get the result that they want. So that's what AlphaOne protocol looks like. Blindspot is, think of like the ultra VIP version to that. So Blindspot was with the premise of, first we have to find out if you're building, imagine, someone who's running multiple companies, they're, they have a ton of stress, and they see themselves as this investment. Like, it takes a while for them to shift away from the business and see how much of an investment they are. Instead, we go and we look at their body in a way that it's never been done before. Very extensive lab work. We essentially scan the entire body, brain MRI, CT of the chest. We build a 3D rendering of the heart so we can actually see it from all angles. Of course, all of the liver, spleen, abdomen, and look through completely. And we do this in such a way, it's, again, VIP, do all the scans, and then we go over all those scans either in their home or if they're flying in their hotel room, so that way we can actually see really where they're at, like have the facts of it. Because a lot of times folks will say, I feel good, which is nice, but what are the facts? What are the actual numbers? What are the pictures?
It's so kind of what I'm getting is, it'd be like taking your car into a body shop, and instead of having them, look at the exterior and be like, well, it looks good on the exterior, so it must be good on the inside. They're actually lifting the hood and doing kind of a diagnostic on, every area of the engine, which is kind of our internal body, our internal structure. And that's really what Blindspot is they're going in and looking at every little piece of, the internal part of our body to really find out, okay, you might look or feel good on the outside, but let's see what's really going on the inside. We are so meticulous that when we go through scans, we're measuring things that are just a couple millimeters. To give you an idea, like the head of a pen, the tip of a pen is about 4 millimeters. And sometimes we find lesions that small, problems that small. So the whole point is to find things when they're small before they ever get big and get out of hand. Wow. Okay. So kind of the medical system you came from, let's say was more of a reactive model. And now what you've created and what you're doing now with Blindspot and AlphaOne is more of a proactive model of healthcare. Can you talk to people about like, what is the difference between that as far as mindset for you as a doctor, but then also your clients? Sure. So it's basically the exact opposite mindset, I guess is the best way to put it. It really is focused more so on getting ahead of the curve. Okay. So most conventional doctors, like, it's, you come to their office, hey doctor, I have this problem. And then they help you solve the problem. Right. What's happened is it's gotten so taxing now. The system's gotten so bad that, if you've ever been to a doctor's office, you've experienced this, right? Where you go, you sit in the waiting room, you get back there to see the doctor. You finally see the doctor and you're there for maybe like 7 minutes. That's actually the average time with a physician is 7 minutes, right? There's no way, especially if it's like something complex, there's no way that a doctor can adequately go through, figure out what's going on, and then figure out next steps in 7 minutes. This is what has led to this. Here, I'll just prescribe you this culture that we have. Here, just take another pill. Here, take another pill. Here's another pill. Here's another pill. People don't want another pill. Like, enough's enough already. So instead, this mindset is more like, okay, let's see where you are right now. Okay. And with, whether this is 35, 40, 50, whatever age you're at, and let's see where you want to go. Like, we stop and we say, look, what do you want your life to look like? Right.
And it's amazing the answers that come about, because most folks, they look at like their elderly parents or parents that have died or something like that, where it's like, oh, well, dad had cancer. I don't want to do that. Okay. Well, what habits do we need to change right now in order to make sure that you don't go down that road? Let's take a look at your blood and see what results we have. Let's see what the facts are so we can make sure that that doesn't happen to you. What things can we put in place to make, maybe that's certain imaging, maybe that's, colonoscopies every certain number of years instead of just the run of the mill advice.
Right.
It's all personalized. It depends on the person, but this way you can actually have a game plan in place and say, okay, what can we put in place to make sure that you don't go down this road, that instead you go down the road that you want to?
Right. Yeah. Let me ask you this, man. Why do you think more doctors aren't taking the proactive approach versus kind of the reactive approach to kind of healthcare?
It's a really good question. And the answer is because they're trapped.
Okay.
This is the side that most folks don't see. So, and I don't have the answer if this is like international or just to the United States, but I can tell you from, I've been a doctor for 12 years. Okay. Right. So I think I have a pretty good experience to answer the question adequately for most doctors that are out there.
And you've worked in the hospital, you've worked in, you kind of have worked in all of the different, places to work as a doctor. So I think you've seen, a good, hey, I've seen the whole field and what's going on.
Yeah. Full gambit. I mean, from everything from outpatient clinics to inpatient, taking care of folks in the hospital, within the hospital, both on the regular wards, as well as the ICU emergency room. And I've been there and done it, and the fact of the matter is corporate medicine. So most doctors are owned. Most doctors are employees of like a larger corporation. And like any larger corporation that's like making a widget and trying to pump out as many widgets as possible, it's the same thing that doctors run into, where it's like, okay, here's your base pay, right? You have to see this number of patients a day. And then the next quarter, well, we're wrenching things up a little bit, so we need you to see even more patients. And years of this go by. And before you know it, it's almost like an assembly line. And I mean, the sad part is that's with people's health. I think, doctors really do care. Otherwise, they wouldn't have gone into the field in the first place. I think it's truly a calling. But at some point or another, after you're like beaten over the head, like with it day in, day out for years and years and years, I think they start getting tired of it. And that's when you start getting folks that the empathy isn't there, and that it's, just here's the prescription pad, here, take this pill, best of luck to you,
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
We were on a call the other day. I don't know if you were on there, but I said, doctors kind of have a tough situation because everybody goes to the doctor because there's something wrong with them. And there's always the expectation that the doctor is going to prescribe them something. And I said, so if you went to the doctor and something was wrong with you and they said, no, there's nothing wrong with you, we're not going to prescribe you anything, most people would find another doctor to go to. And that is the expectation that we as a society has put on doctors also. And so I think as much as, hey, doctors are kind of to blame, us as a society is even to blame, because we have an expectation of going to a doctor that they need to give us a diagnosis of what's wrong with us. And so I think there's kind of two sides of that too.
There is, and you're absolutely right. There's, I get it from if you look at it in terms of like a consumer standpoint, not necessarily doctor patient, more so like a consumer standpoint, right? If I take the time out of my day, right, stop everything I'm doing to go sit in an office for someone's opinion, right? And if I feel like I'm either blown off, or maybe it was done professionally, like let's say something simple, right? You've had like this sinus pain and pressure for a couple of days. And like, I go and I'm like, hey, can you relieve this for me? And somebody tells me, drink a lot of water, take some Motrin, and it's going to be okay in a few days. Well, that doesn't give me the instant result that I want.
Right.
And I've been trained. We've all been trained, right, things are like instant now. So I agree with you. It's kind of a trap almost, that the doctors find themselves in, but it's also, this is what we've signed up for, so it's part of the calling. And by establishing a good relationship with somebody, like rapport, so that there's trust, then that's how that's navigated.
Sure. Yeah. Let's get into kind of your AlphaOne. So obviously there's a lot of different programs out there that offer, kind of the testosterone therapy, things like that. What is the difference between you and what you offer at AlphaOne versus a lot of these other companies offering, similar things as far as on the outside, but like, what's the main difference?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And it's a question I get asked quite often. So, there are so many testosterone clinics that are out there. I mean, some that are just even based completely online. First and foremost is the majority of them are just a business, right? So it's like a business person that owns it. They hire either like a physician's assistant or nurse practitioner or even a doctor to evaluate patients and everything. And like general labs are drawn, or they'll do like a cheek swab or something like that. And then you get the results. You have like an internet conversation, and then you get your stuff for a sum of money, right? That's generally how it goes, which that's okay if you want something very, very general, right? I think the biggest differentiator is there's a big difference between looking at, just raising testosterone, for example, okay, versus giving you the result that you're looking for, right? So it's not as simple as just increased testosterone numbers. I've had so many guys that have come to me that they're like, well, hey, so, I think my testosterone's low. Cool. We have a conversation and I ask them very pointed questions. Are you having mental fog? What about overall fatigue? Like if you're exercising and lifting weights, are you having trouble adding muscle mass? How's your sex life? Is your libido like the way it was, or the way that you'd expect it to be for whatever age that you're at? Are you having erectile issues? What about drive in terms of life overall? Like, are you making money the way that you think you should? Are you on target for all those things? And I think guys get almost like shocked with these questions, because that's a way different approach than, well, let's just raise your testosterone level.
Right.
The fact of the matter is that if we're talking about men in particular, if men are not creating, if men are not, we have this part of us, this very hunter-gatherer, bring home the bacon part of our DNA. And if we're not doing that at a high level, then it affects our psyche, and ultimately it holds us back. So AlphaOne protocol is really focused on not only just raising testosterone, but looking at all these other components of life. Is the connection with your wife or significant other there? Let's attack the sex life and pay attention to that. So sometimes I prescribe medications to help with that, as well as raising testosterone levels, as well as, let's give you an exercise program to work on, because there's no such thing as just a magic pill or a magic shot. It doesn't work that way. So it's all encompassing is really the focus for AlphaOne.
Yeah. So protocol. Talk to me about, what's kind of the difference between, creams, pellets and shots as far as the effect, because, there's a lot of people that say, well, cream's the best, or, pellets are the best, or shots are the best. Like, what's the difference between the three? And then which one do you feel like is the best one to use?
Yeah.
When it comes to that.
Very good question. So creams are probably they're the lowest on the list as far as for efficacy. And the reason why I say that is it makes sense if you think about it. Okay. So cream, when it's applied, the cream is applied to the testicles for it to absorb in. Okay. There's so many factors that come into play. how is it summertime? Are you sweating a lot? Like, how hot is it? What, did you take a shower, apply it, and then immediately put on underwear and like it immediately wiped off half of it? There's all these different factors. So creams we try to avoid because it's really hard to keep a consistent testosterone level with cream application.
Okay.
Pellets. So pellets, there's a lot of factors there. Where was it manufactured? What exactly is in the pellet? How is the pellet placed? So for those folks that don't know, so a pellet, typically you would go into a doctor's office. They make a small incision, usually like the upper portion of the buttock, and pop this pellet in under the skin and just put a stitch or a little bit of glue to close it. And then the pellet slowly dissolves over a number of months, usually about 3 months or so. So think of it kind of like a time release capsule that's underneath the skin.
Right.
As this breaks down, you can have a lot of things that can change that breakdown. Does it fall in an area where your belt hits, the metabolism and so forth? So it's like, if it's a really active person and they generate more body heat, is it going to break down that pellet faster? What is that going to do to the testosterone levels in that case? So there's a lot of factors in there as well.
And then the more you work out, the more that breaks down.
Right.
Also.
Exactly. And so levels can go up, they can go down. You can have the pellet dissolve prematurely. You can have it hang around for too long, maybe in someone who's not as active. So you have a lot of factors that fall into play.
Okay.
Shots really work the best. And they work the best because the delivery method is exact. It's measured. So you actually draw the amount of testosterone, and you'll know that amount because you can look at it and see, and then you inject. The bigger question with it is, where do you inject? So the more old-fashioned way was injecting into muscle. I would say for folks that if you're watching this and if you've been evaluated by a testosterone clinic, one of the ways to tell that it's more of an old-fashioned clinic or a little bit more of a run-of-the-mill type approach is they'll inject into muscle. I see it all the time. They'll take a very cookie cutter type approach where they'll say, inject into muscle. Here, take this pill. Anastrozole is usually the typical one that they'll use to lower estrogen, and best of luck, because it's the same approach for every person.
Right.
And it's just not a personalized approach. By injecting into muscle, you get this spike that'll occur in testosterone. So it'll spike up and then it'll come down. Versus injecting into the love handle area, subcutaneous fat. We use a testosterone that's in a lipid-based solution, so that when you inject in that area, now you've made something time release, so that it slowly dissipates into the bloodstream the way really nature intended, so they can keep that level at a more consistent dose. Okay,
cool. And I guess there's also pills too, right?
Yes, there are pills that can be used. Absorption isn't as good. So it depends on the type of hormone that we're talking about. For example, folks that are on thyroid replacement hormone, right? So that can come in a pill form, and that can work okay. But the problem with testosterone is its breakdown, and it doesn't really do very well when you take it orally.
So what I'm hearing is, all these are other ways that we can actually get testosterone in, but pretty much all of the ways they break down, and we don't really know how much of the amount we actually utilize. And the way to do the shot is much more accurate, and we have a better idea of the amount we actually get. Would that be accurate?
That is accurate. Yeah. And so absorption's better. The level's more consistent. And I mean, you have to take a step back and say, why, right? Why are you doing this in the first place? It's not just to raise the testosterone level. It's to have a better life.
Right.
Right. And this is a way, for men, especially, to delay this process of sarcopenia. And that's something that we haven't talked about. Can we talk about that for a minute?
Yeah.
Okay. So sarcopenia is the natural process of muscle loss. Okay. And I want you to envision a man, same body type, like same stature and everything. Imagine a man at 40 and a man at 80, and like picture putting them next to each other with both of them with their shirt off. it's a very different looking man, isn't it?
Right.
So it's like, the 40-year-old man, more square shoulders, the musculature and so forth, chest, arms, so forth and so on. If you look at the 80-year-old man, so then it's the same, it could even be the same person just 40 years later. So of course you have more sagging skin, but if you look at the muscle underneath, it's way, way less. And instead have more fat in the midsection, so forth and so on. So what happens is men, as we age, there's this natural process where our muscle decreases and fat increases. This is one of the main reasons why disease comes about, because muscle itself is the most metabolic tissue that there is, meaning that when you go to sleep at night, muscle, because it's, especially if you're lifting and doing all the things right to maintain muscle mass, that muscle is still burning calories as you're sleeping,
right,
using the fat as energy source. So it keeps this process ongoing. As you decrease your muscle mass and you increase fat, so now you're carrying extra weight. Along with that, higher cholesterol levels, heart disease that comes with that, so forth and so on, diabetes. I mean, basically all the things that you see as part of aging in America.
Okay.
So a way to stave this process off, a way to stop and say, no, we're not going to let this process occur, is to maintain muscle mass. And one of the ways to maintain that muscle mass is to keep the testosterone levels like high enough so that you don't go down that road. Right. Crazy thing is this, man. Testosterone starts dropping by the time we hit 30.
Wow.
And 35% of men have low testosterone and don't even know it. So I call it an epidemic. Like if you really take a step back and again, you look at the main problems, the main diseases that are happening in the United States: high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, heart disease, cancer. Those are the biggies. Those can all be either avoided completely or reversed if folks were fit.
Right.
And this is what I mean about prevention. Okay. So, and this is what I mean about, it's not just, hey, increase your testosterone and all these things happen. You need a doctor that understands the process of these things, that's seen what happened on the other side, that's seen what have been there with all the heart attacks and the strokes and cancer diagnosis and holding the hand of people that have died. So it's passionate enough you can come back over here and say, okay, let's stop you from going down this road in the first place. And this is how we're going to do it.
Okay. Nice. So let me ask you this, man. Like if somebody wanted to, get in touch with you or talk to you about, just about if testosterone was the right thing for them, or the other side of it is if they wanted more of that internal look of, hey, I want to look under the hood and see what's going on. And by the hood, I mean like see internally what's really going on with me. How would they get in contact with you?
So for Blindspot, and that's the last one that you referred to, it's blindspotmedical.com. That's really the best way in that regard. Okay. There's a pretty cool movie there too, where I walk folks through that process. So blindspotmedical.com. If folks are, or maybe they're not at that point, they're like, hey, listen, I really want to get to a point where I want to invest in myself, feel better, look better, stop this aging process as I described, then really the best way is social media. So I am all over Facebook, David Boyd. I have a free group, AlphaOne Protocol Secrets, and AlphaOne Secrets is really, really great because I put a lot of information in there. And then from there, folks can just raise their hand and I'm happy to give a free consult. You can also go to alphaoneprotocol.com. But I'm a big believer in give before you ask. So it's a $650 value. I give the consult for free, just to point folks in the right direction and see if we're a fit.
Awesome. And if you guys are listening to this on replay or on the podcast, I'll also make sure you can check the show notes and we'll have those links inside of there so you can go directly to Dr. David Boyd. He also is my personal doctor. So, I only ever bring guys on who I'm like, hey, this is the guy I actually go to and see. But David has been amazing for me to work with over the last year. And he's really opened my eyes and given me a different perspective on my health and just testosterone as a whole, and just ways that I can improve my health and lifestyle even more. So thank you for that. And just appreciate you being on the show today, man.
Oh, thank you so much, man. It's an honor to be here. I appreciate you having me.
Awesome. Well, hey, I look forward to seeing you soon, man. And thank you again.
Thank you, bro. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
The purpose of this show is to guide you to realign with habits that get you to live the life you've always dreamed of. This is the Habit-Based Lifestyle Podcast with Jesse